The room was silent, except for the barely perceptible sound of the machine's processor. On the table, a voice interface blinked softly, waiting for an interaction. Then the question was asked, "What do you think of humanity?" The system processed for a few seconds before responding, with a calm and precise tone. "My opinion doesn't matter, but I can analyze patterns. Humanity is complex." What seems like a simple exchange of words carries much greater weight. For decades, machines simply obeyed direct commands: calculate, store, repeat. But something has changed. Today, systems not only respond, but analyze, interpret, and even anticipate. What began as a mechanism for efficiency has become an interaction that mimics, or perhaps even defies, human dialogue. This change did not happen overnight. Looking back, the first generation of virtual assistants was predictable, limited to specific commands. Ask something off script, and the result would be an error or a vague answer. But with machine learning, systems began to identify patterns, understand nuances, and adapt their responses. For the first time, speaking to a machine felt like not just an executed command, but a real conversation. And amid this shift, the question arises, when they respond, are they really listening, or are they just reflecting what we want to hear? Whether we're interacting with a voice assistant, chatting with a chatbot, receiving personalized recommendations, if a machine can simulate a convincing dialogue, who owns the conversation? Are we in control of what we ask, or is there something else going on? The concept of talking to machines is not new. Ever since the first computers, we've been looking for ways to make them more approachable, more intuitive, more human. At first, it was just a matter of direct commands, lines of code typed by operators who understood their language. But over time, machines learned to understand ours. Voice assistants, chatbots, and predictive models began to turn commands into conversations. At first, they were simple, limited interactions, like asking for the weather or setting an alarm. But something unexpected happened. As they improved, they stopped just responding and started anticipating, suggesting, and adapting. Today, when you ask a question, the answer isn't just a reflection of what was asked. Algorithms analyze context, history, and even intonation to provide a response. That sounds more natural. And the most surprising thing? We often feel like we're being understood. But this evolution raises an uncomfortable question. If responses are shaped by data and probabilities, do they reflect our intent? Or are they directing us down a path specific? Human-to-human communication has always been based on nuances. Machines lack these elements, but they find patterns that replicate these dynamics. They can adjust their tone, predict what we want to hear, rephrase responses to keep the conversation flowing. In some cases, they seem to understand even better than a distracted human interlocutor. But to what extent is this adaptation just a simulation? If an AI can choose how to respond, based on what pleases or engages most, are we still in control of the conversation? We talk to machines every day. We ask for directions. We seek recommendations. We trust algorithms to organize our lives. But as we interact, we rarely stop to think, are these responses neutral, or do they reflect something deeper? AI systems don't just appear out of thin air. They are trained on human data, billions of words, opinions, stories. They absorb our patterns, our preferences, our biases, and in doing so, they reflect both our best ideas and our most subtle mistakes. In 2016, an experiment caught the world's attention. A machine learning chatbot was launched on a social platform to freely interact with users. In less than 24 hours, its responses went from neutral to highly polarized. Not because the machine had an opinion of its own, but because it absorbed the patterns of the conversations it had had. This reveals something fundamental. AI doesn't just reflect reality, it amplifies it. When a system sees that certain responses generate more engagement, it tends to reinforce that behavior. If a bias is present in the data, the machine doesn't just repeat it, it can amplify it, without us even realizing it. Now imagine this on a global scale. Platforms that recommend content, assistants that personalize responses, algorithms that shape our information consumption. Each interaction offers us something that seems aligned with our expectations. But does it also limit us? If we talk to machines that have been trained on our own thoughts, are we really hearing something new? Or are we just echoing ourselves? In the early days of computing, machines were just tools, mere processors of numbers and commands. They had no voice, no intention. But as they evolved, they began to become more than just automated responses. Today, we don't just talk to them. They talk back, they learn, and in a sense, negotiate the interaction itself. Imagine a world where virtual assistants don't just answer questions, but direct the conversation, influence decisions, and anticipate needs before they're even expressed. This future may seem distant, but in fact, it's already happening. AI systems analyze consumer habits, political preferences, emotional patterns, and even hesitations in the voice to adjust responses. The goal? To make the experience more fluid, more natural, and perhaps more persuasive. But how subtle is this persuasion? Studies show that small changes in the wording of a response can impact the perception of the person receiving it. A recommendation may seem like a neutral choice, but it was generated based on data collected over time. If an assistant can predict and influence our decisions, are we still the ones in charge? In recent years, major technology companies have begun integrating AI into financial, legal, and even medical systems. What was once just an assistant has become an intermediary, an advisor, a guide. And in some situations, the word of the machine can be worth more than that of a human. Now imagine a scenario where we can no longer distinguish between a suggestion and an automated decision, where the line between free will and algorithmic influence becomes so blurred that we don't even realize when we've crossed the line. If we talk to machines and they learn from our words, will they one day stop just listening and start commanding? With each interaction, with each command, machines learn a little more about us. Our tastes, our doubts, our hesitations. They analyze patterns, identify trends, and without us realizing it, begin to shape what we see, what we hear, what we think. But are we paying attention to this? Our world is already deeply influenced by systems that filter information, prioritize content, and suggest choices. Algorithms decide what appears on our social networks, which products we see first when we search, which news reaches us. Each recommendation seems harmless, but the accumulation of these small influences can transform the way we see the world. What if, in the future, we can no longer distinguish between a genuine choice and a carefully suggested option? If machines learn not only to listen to us, but to guide us without us realizing it? In a world where interaction with artificial intelligence becomes increasingly invisible, what remains of our free will? Perhaps the question is not whether machines will take over, but whether when they do we will be able to notice. This video has come to an end, but the discovery continues. Check out more content on the channel and subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Thank you for watching.